murder of Madison Mogen, how do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
For the murder of Kaylee Goncalves, how do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
The murder of Xana Kernodle, a human being, how do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
The murder of Ethan Chapin, a human being, how do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
He never explained why. Not really. Not in a way that meant anything. 4 lives ended on a November night in 2022. 4 University of Idaho students, Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin. But this isn't about that night. This is about what happens when the cameras turn off, when the trial ends, when everyone goes home. This is about a man who craved understanding, when he's left with nothing but time. This is Case Within, where we don't just tell the story, we go inside it. Because what you're about to hear isn't about death row, it's about something slower, something quieter, something worse. Subscribe if you want the full picture, not just the crime, the consequence.
Edition of Things Bryan Kohberger doesn't like about prison. It's a long list, so get comfy, and I, for one, am delighted by it. I cannot get enough of the petty gripes that this bloodthirsty killer has ever since his ass was handed to him, and especially since he narrowly avoided a firing squad. Kohberger has been at Idaho's toughest prison since July, as you know. And by August, he was already filing formal complaints about the food, like the quality of it, the quantity of it, and of course his fellow inmates who Kohberger says are mean to him. Wah. But now, almost 5 months into his lifelong sentence, he's had time to get used to the place, and yet the complaints keep coming. This time, he's got a problem with, wait for it, the color of the marker, bananas. Bryan Kohberger says prison bananas are not up to his standards. Of course, he is far from the only inmate, infamous or otherwise, to complain about the prison food. The Unabomber himself, Ted Kaczynski, once complained to Food Services at the Supermax that his hamburger was undercooked. Of the Cold Case Foundation, and he's got his ear to the wall of Kohberger's prison. And he joins me now with everything that he's been hearing. I suppose I shouldn't say I can't believe this, because I can't believe that human walked the earth with us. What was wrong with the bananas, did he say?
You know, Ashley, you can't make this stuff up, right? I mean, here this guy commits a quadruple homicide. He gets a 4-term, sentences. And now he's telling the staff that, hey, these aren't the type of bananas that I like. And I don't know if they have bruises on them or what the circumstances are in relationship to the bananas. But, it's interesting because at this prison, they call their inmates residents. But I don't know if he really understands, that being a residence where he is at, you don't get to pick and choose what you eat and how you eat it.
Question. He's also complaining about the size and location of his cell. What's he got a problem with now?
Yeah, well, so he's still in the J block over in the exact same cell that he has been since they, put him in solitary confinement. The problem that he's having is the inmates still around him are still, just relentless to this point. And so now he's turned that back to the staff saying, you guys got to get me out of here.
Yeah. How's the staff responding to this guy?
Well, they realize, they can't put him into general population. So it's kind of a catch-22 right now, because if they put him into general pop, he could be a potential target for other inmates based on the fact that the behavior that they're experiencing right now. So they have to keep him exactly where he's at. And, until they figure out exactly, where they can put him. But I think that's a manipulation tactic on Kohberger's part as well, to try to get out of there.
Seems like he just wants to be the boss of everything and is very unhappy about the fact that he's not. I have to harken back about the last, infamous inmate who complained about his food, or at least had a food issue, and it was Dahmer. Dahmer was actually arranging his food on his plate into what looked like body parts and then squirting them with ketchup as if to look like blood, and it didn't go over well with his fellow inmates.
Yeah, and I don't think this is going over well either with Kohberger's inmates themselves, because my source tells me he entered that prison with this idea of, I'm Bryan Kohberger, I just killed 4 people, so therefore I'm one of you. And that's not how it's playing out at all, and they resent him for it.
Hell.
Tells me he entered that prison with this idea of, I'm Bryan Kohberger, I just killed 4 people, so therefore I'm one of you. And that's not how it's playing out at all, and they resent him for it.
Hell. And we all know how it turned out for Dahmer. Piss off the inmates, gross them out about your food, and make sure you're not on an unsupervised work detail, because Dahmer ended up dead that way.
There's a question that nobody asked.
Idaho Maximum Security Institution. J Block, solitary confinement. Inmate number 55,334. This is Bryan Kohberger's entire world now. The cell is 8 feet wide, 10 feet long, 80 square feet. Smaller than most people's bathrooms. A steel bed bolted to the wall, a thin mattress, 1 blanket. A stainless steel toilet and sink. A small desk, also bolted down. 1 fluorescent light, controlled from outside. No windows. The routine never changes. 6:45 a.m., lights on. 7 a.m., breakfast through the slot, powdered eggs, toast, fruit, coffee. Bryan Kohberger has complained about the food repeatedly. The portions are inconsistent, items go missing. The fruit is poor quality. The bananas specifically. He's filed multiple grievances about the bananas. 8 to 11 a.m., alone in the cell. No television, limited reading, no internet, no phone calls. Just silence. And his thoughts. 11 a.m., 1 hour of recreation. A concrete enclosure, slightly larger than his cell. Alone. He walks in circles or stands still. Then back to the cell. Noon lunch through the slot. 5 p.m. dinner. 9 p.m. lights out, whether he's tired or not. 23 hours a day in that cell. Every day. But the isolation isn't just physical. Other inmates know who he is. The taunting started almost immediately. Through the air vents, through gaps around cell doors. Voices echoing through concrete corridors. Threats, insults, mockery. 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. Yelling, banging, keeping him awake. Bryan Kohberger has filed complaints. He says other inmates have threatened him with sexual assault. He says the guards aren't doing enough. He says he fears for his safety. The complaints are noted. Logged. Filed. Nothing changes. In August 2025, he requested a transfer to a different facility. He cited ongoing harassment, threats, hostile environment. Denied. October, another request. Denied. December, another. Denied. January 2026, rumors surfaced that Idaho officials wanted him transferred out of state. A spokesperson released a statement. They were not considering transferring Bryan Kohberger. He was staying exactly where he was. Every morning, he wakes to the same walls. Every night, the same voices through the vents. Every meal through the same slot. Every complaint disappears into the void. This isn't temporary. This is the rest of his life. If you believe the victims' names deserve to be remembered more than his complaints about bananas, leave a comment below. Madison, Kaylee, Xana, Ethan. To understand why Bryan Kohberger is in this cell, you need to understand the choice he made. Not the choice to kill. The choice to live. November 13, 2022. Moscow, Idaho, an off-campus house. 4 people stabbed to death while they slept. Brutal, sustained, personal. January 2026, sealed autopsy records were released. 150 combined stab wounds. Xana Kernodle, 67 wounds. Kaylee Goncalves, 38. Madison Mogen, 28. Ethan Chapin, 17. Evidence suggested the bodies were posed. Arranged. A final act of control. Bryan Kohberger was arrested December 30th, 2022. 28 years old, PhD student studying criminology at Washington State University. Researching criminal behavior, the psychology of violence. DNA from a knife sheath found at the scene matched his profile. Cell phone records placed him near the victim's house 12 times before the murders. Security footage captured his white Hyundai Elantra leaving at 4:20 a.m. Walmart surveillance showed him shopping with gloves after the murders, a behavioral change. The evidence was overwhelming. But for 2.5 years, Bryan Kohberger maintained his innocence. Prosecutors sought the death penalty. Idaho still uses execution, lethal injection, or firing squad. Then, July 2nd, 2025, he changed his plea. Guilty. All charges. The death penalty was taken off the table. Instead, 4 consecutive life sentences without parole, plus 10 years for burglary. He would never be executed, but he would also never leave prison. At sentencing, the judge asked if he wanted to speak. He declined. The family spoke. They described the holes in their lives, the future stolen, the endless pain. Bryan Kohberger stared straight ahead. Silent. He made a calculation. Death after years of appeals. Or decades in a cell forgotten. He chose the cell. But the death penalty ends. This doesn't. Subscribe to Case Within to see what happens when the courtroom empties and real consequences begin. There's a particular kind of violence in solitary confinement. It's slow, incremental. A kind of erosion. Bryan Kohberger is 31 years old. Before arrest, he was a doctoral student, someone with a future. Now he's inmate 55,334. The distance between those two things grows wider every day. Psychologists have studied long-term solitary confinement. The effects are devastating. Time distortion. Without natural light, without routine variation, the brain loses its ability to track time. Days blur together, hours stretch endlessly. Cognitive decline. Memory problems, difficulty concentrating, confusion. The brain, deprived of stimulation, atrophies. Hallucinations. Visual, auditory, tactile. The mind, desperate for input, starts creating it. Emotional flatness, or emotional volatility. The ability to regulate feelings diminishes. Identity fracture. The sense of self dissolves. Without social interaction, who am I becomes impossible to answer. Bryan Kohberger is experiencing all of this. Right now, his complaints have become more frequent, more desperate. The noise, the temperature, the lighting. The meal timing, the food quality, missing items. Inadequate hygiene products. Threats from inmates. Guards' indifference. Inadequate mental health resources. Each complaint is documented. Nothing changes. The system isn't designed to change. It's designed to contain. The taunting hasn't stopped. It's gotten worse. They know his case. They know what he did. Even among violent offenders, killing 4 college students in their sleep ranks low. The yelling continues. The threats continue. The banging at 3 a.m. continues. He requested a new cell. Denied. Better recreation facilities. Denied. More mental health evaluations. Denied. He's losing weight. Prison records show steady decline. His body is breaking down. His mind is following. Reports say he talks to himself now. Long conversations, alone in his cell. Sometimes arguing, sometimes explaining. Guards hear it through the door. They note it. They move on. He wanted control. He studied power dynamics, violence as dominance. Now he's trapped in a system designed to remove every shred of control. He can't choose when lights turn on. Can't choose what he eats. Can't choose when he sleeps. Can't choose silence. Every aspect of his existence is dictated by others. He is powerless. Completely. For the next 4.5 decades. Meanwhile, the victims' families continue to live. They grieve, they remember, they advocate. They have agency, purpose, connection. Bryan Kohberger has a cell and complaints about bananas. Share this if you want people to understand what punishment really means. In the months after the murders, Bryan Kohberger's case was everywhere. National news, documentaries, podcasts. Everyone wanted to understand. Who was he? Why did he do it? His background was dissected, social media analyzed, academic work scrutinized. The public wanted answers. Bryan Kohberger never provided them. No manifesto, no explanation. Just silence. Eventually, the attention moved on. By late 2025, media coverage slowed to a trickle. New cases emerged, new mysteries. The news cycle kept moving. The autopsy details in January 2026 sparked brief resurgence. Headlines outrage. Within a week, it faded again. Bryan Kohberger is no longer a national fascination. He's a footnote, a number in a cell. Inside that cell, he's aware of this. Letters have decreased, attention from true crime enthusiasts waned. He's becoming what every inmate becomes. Forgotten. There's particular cruelty for someone like him. A criminology student who studied famous cases, analyzed notorious killers. He wanted to be significant. For a brief moment he was. But significance requires attention. And attention has moved on. The families of Madison, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan haven't moved on. They can't. They wake every day with absence. But they also live. They laugh, they love, they create new memories. Bryan Kohberger's life stopped July 2025. Not because he died. Because he ceased to exist in any meaningful way. He eats, sleeps, breathes. But he doesn't live. Every day is the same. Same walls, same routine, same complaints going nowhere. He's a ghost haunting his own cell. He remains. In J block. In solitary. Filing complaints about temperature and food and noise. Counting hours until his next meal. Listening to inmates yell through vents. Alone. Forgotten. Erased. He wanted to matter. Now he's learning what it means to be irrelevant. Subscribe to Case Within because some names deserve to be remembered, and some deserve to fade. Bryan Kohberger is 31 years old. Average life expectancy for a man in the United States is 76. He has 45 years left. 16,000 days. All of them in that cell. 45 years ago, it was 1981. Ronald Reagan became president. MTV launched. The first IBM personal computer released. Think about everything since then. The internet, September 11th, smartphones, social media, the pandemic. Entire generations born and raised. That's how long Bryan Kohberger has ahead. Except none of those things will happen for him. Just the same 80 square feet. For 45 years. Research on extended solitary confinement is clear. The human brain deteriorates. After 5 years, significant cognitive decline. After 10 years, permanent psychological damage. After 20 years, profound identity dissolution. Bryan Kohberger is less than 2 years in. He has 43 more to go. By 40, nearly a decade in that cell. By 50, 2 decades. By 60, 3 decades. His hair will gray, his body will age, his mind will deteriorate. He'll develop chronic health problems common to long-term isolation. Limited medical care, aging in a concrete box. The routine won't change. Same meal, same schedule, same walls. He'll file more complaints. They'll be logged and ignored. Decades from now, when he's an old man, most people won't remember his name. A footnote in true crime history. But he'll still be there. In that cell, complaining about the fruit. Bryan Kohberger will outlive his victims. Madison died at 21. Kaylee at 21. Xana at 20. Ethan at 20. He'll live decades longer. But he stopped existing the moment that cell door closed. They lived. Fully, messily, hopefully. They had friends, dreams, futures. He has a cell. And decades to sit in it. He avoided the death penalty. He chose life. But this isn't life. It's the absence of life. Existence without meaning, time without purpose. Waking up every day to nothing. Knowing it will never change. He wanted control. He got it. Total control. Over 80 square feet of concrete and steel. Over complaints that go nowhere. Over a life that's already ended. The death penalty would have been faster. This is slower. And permanent. And far more devastating. Bryan Kohberger will have 45 years to understand what he's lost. 45 years to feel time stretch endlessly forward. 45 years to be forgotten. And at the end, when he finally dies in that cell as an old man, the world won't notice. The families of Madison, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan will still carry their loss. Still speak their names. Still remember. Bryan Kohberger will be buried in a prison cemetery. A number on a marker. Already forgotten. Like this video, if you understand what justice actually looks like. This is Case Within, where we don't look away from what justice actually looks like. Subscribe for stories that go deeper. Comment with the name of someone you think deserves to be remembered. And share this not because it's shocking, but because it's true. Because some sentences are worse than death. And some names deserve to be spoken, while others deserve to fade into silence.